Hi, welcome back. My name is Tony Sage. I'm a dev and this is Sage Dev. We are going through the Street Bytes video vlog series talking about my trials and tribulations and development. So far we've been through our basic design architectural planning. We've gone through setting up style guides, themes, and components, and established a working homepage, a welcome page. So now we're going to pick up where we left off. Let's see what we can do. So before we do anything, I uncovered a problem. One of potentially many future problems. So let's start the app and see where we are. All of the work that I did the other day is captured in the README. If you like, here is the complete README. One of the things I ran into the other day, just doing some final testing, not any development, to start our development server. So at its heart, this is a PHP driven system, and PHP renders a lot like HTML. So when it comes to the logic working through that pipeline, it's mostly going to render as is without running this step. But because we're dealing with queue worker, log monitor, we have Vite, all these things, we do need to run a composer dev. So when I ran that, I ran into my first issue. You can see there might be a couple more here that I have to resolve too. So everything looks right. It's stylized. It's mobile first. The header and footer, all the links, all of that's still fine. The issue is when I run this. So Composer Dev is a shortcut that it built for us to stand up all of the pieces. And at a glance, it looks like everything should be working. It's processing from the queue. It stood up Vite. It stood up the Laravel version and set up everything for us. But when I look at the app, I get this. So when you really dig into this, it's a front-end problem. So this ultimately stems from a problem with our network flow. So usually when you run into these things where everything works until the SPA is running, it's related to network flow. If you look at this, I can tell at a glance WAF is a served font library. I have my client Vite is responding with a, what is that, a 500 with a nothing. It's almost as if it doesn't exist. And this is not a great place to start today, but I'm trying not to hide anything in this video series, so we're going to problem solve it. If I were to guess, without asking AI, I would imagine that this is a certificate problem. The only reason that I don't know that for sure is because I'm not getting a response header saying this is a bad certificate. The only response I'm getting back is my 200 OK. We also have an issue with specific services from Lando are not coming back. So Node and Reverb should be coming back. So since we're doing AI-based development, I'm going to go ahead and ask. I'm going to switch to auto. I want it to determine if it needs to do the work or not, and you can define that in the actual prompt, but I'm going to ask it. So I'm having trouble running Lando Composer Dev. I double checked, triple checked everything that's in the Claude.ai .md files is being loaded on the top of these. Because I'm working out of that directory, it just brings them in automatically, which is what I expected. But because of that, it's going to have all the context every day that I do a change. I have it update Claude.md to reflect those changes, so it should know exactly where this problem lies. Now the issue is going to be how it resolves them. So let me grab a couple here. So I'm going to just say these routes are not returning as expected once the composer dev is run and all the pieces are in place. So let's see what it says. When you're dealing with this type of stuff, the more detail you give it, the better and faster it runs. And if I wanted to, and I don't think this is a PHP issue, but if I thought it was a PHP issue, you can go to I've got a Street Bytes app server. In Lando, app server is where we have all of our errors related to PHP logs. You can set up a script to export those logs, but for 90% of cases, this is enough that we could see it in real time. Actually, this get index might be a part of this. Let's see what Claude had to say. Composer dev script stock Laravel, which isn't Lando aware. That's what happens when you stand all of this up with an automated AI solution, is things just don't do what they want to do, what you want them to do out of the box. You have to constantly tell it specifically what you need, and if you give any vague answer, then things just aren't going to line up the way that you expect. So hopefully it has an idea. It's going to rebuild this language, this composer dev script, in such a way that it will automatically resolve itself. So while it's working that, let's talk about what we're going to do next. So theoretically, everything we've done is functional, and all that's left is hooking up the backend for the home page. We have multiple pages to stand up. But from the home page, if I reload, let's see if it killed the composer. It didn't. If I look at the art that we've already done, oh, never mind, let's see. Vite ignores your build manifest.json and points at the URL inside it. So the browser's trying to fetch from an IP where nothing is listening. So app.css, app.js are my Vite that aren't rendering. Client is the HMR for Vite. The WAF files are inside Vite. So all of those things are Vite related. Composer dev is stock Laravel. And npm run dev is plain Vite with no host. So Vite is bound to the container's IP6 loopback. Vite plugin wrote that into public hot, which is unreachable from the browser. So this is what it's saying is we have the actual front end that's accessible from the browser, that is something that we can get to from just a local URL. You could put in localhost, a port number /app, and it would serve. This is not doing that. It's building it inside of the container. So it's not reachable from the browser. It's actually inside of our systems, which is what we don't want. So immediate unblock, delete that old stuff, then drop it into public build so that it works. Fine. Make the live dev server work properly behind Lando. That's what we want. right now Vite only sets to watch. So it's going to update Vite inside of my Vite config. It's going to set my origin to Vite streetbytes.lando.site. So now if this is building correctly, I should be able to go directly to a URL, which is this lando.site extension, and it should stand up my Vite. This uses this proxy. So run Lando the native way, not in Composer. Rewrite the composer.dev script to be Lando correct, which is not artisan, or artisan, sorry. Run Vite via the node service and or fix Claude empty. Either way, the immediate problem is solved. It's really a toss-up as to what we want to do. Let's move away from the composer dev call and instead just fix the Claude MD, because I don't want to fix this today and have to rebuild it every time that we do this. We want it to do it automatically. There's no reason that we would want to do that regularly. So the real value now of being a dev compared to years ago. Years ago it was no one knows how to do what you do and it's impossible to get there. Now I know through my work and life experience what this is trying to say. And that is something that will expedite the process and why vibe code can lead to so many issues. So now it's going to host 000 flag, no longer needed, because it's in the config, passing still works. No one does it out of habit. This is brand new. Run Vite through Lando npm run dev, composer dev with that. So those have been updated in Claude. And the host flag is, do you want me to commit? No, let's see what it did. So Claude MD has that. So it's basically changing Claude's context as to what we do. So when it says we need to run it, it's going to run it this way. And then it changed the Vite to give it that new origin URL, which is accessible through port 443, which is a local port. Let's see. Not yet. Can you update the readme.md to match? Do we need to remove anything from the composer that is legacy, is no longer relevant? Yeah, we don't want to leave anything in Composer that's not running the way that we want it to. It feels like that's just leading to issues down the road. It's easier on a new project to set these things up fresh, but when you're working on a legacy project and you have code that's deprecated and you have code that's not relevant, it not only costs more tokens for AI to run through that legacy code, it's also leading to confusion. So when you tell it, like, I have an API that we don't strictly declare it as API whatever version number. We just say this API is being called, update this API, and it doesn't know which version it's looking at. Having that version control can be useful, especially if you're building an API service and you want multiple things to hit it and you don't want them to have to change their version every time that you reversion, which is great until you run into things where it doesn't understand the context anymore because you have something in your code base from 10 years ago that's not in use and not relevant, but when Claude sees it, it goes, oh, that must be what you're talking about, which is obviously not the case. Laravel POW, the dev script itself. That's what I want. We've documented, do not use it, so leaving it in Composer.json just invites someone to run it. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Leftover SQLite skeleton CRUD. but it's MariaDB. So that must have been brought in with Artisan. But I don't want that. Want me to clean those up? Please clean them up. While you're at it, would you do an audit to make sure that all the config are reflecting the setup we architected? So the real benefit, I got sidetracked because it's talking to me. The real benefit of having that dev experience is that you understand context and can give proper thought. If you do vibe code and you don't know the context and you don't understand what it's trying to tell you, then it's impossible to sell the product because you don't know what it's doing or why. You just know that it does it. It's also impossible to problem solve and troubleshoot. And that's not an issue for some sites. For the most basic, here's a mom and pop, we call them like a pamphlet website, where it just has here's me, here's what I do, and here's my history and background, like 3 pages, and that's it. But that's not where the real complexity comes into these things. It's connecting outside, pulling data in, sending data out, filling out forms, database, and all of those parts. And that's where the expertise still plays a role, which is why we're going to spend our time and architect things properly. So it's remove SQLite, drop from composer's language, config, changes to MariaDB, env connection MySQL to MariaDB, and rewrite the env example to mirror the architected setup. Let's see if it finds anything else. So this is just tying all the pieces together that we established on day one and making sure they're all in alignment. So I noticed when we look at some of these things that it's doing here, like database, right now this is still, where's its change? Oh, it's way up here. The DB connection was set as MariaDB, or was set as MySQL. I think it was SQLite or something like that. So now it's going to be MariaDB, which is what we're looking for. It's also updating our connections to properly reflect what we need there. And a lot of this, depending on what we've done and how we've done it, and there's a couple ways you could stand up Laravel, but one of them is with Artisan, and Artisan has its own recipes that it likes to follow, and we didn't give it any of the strict actions that we need. Check through the env files against your architected stack. Your config PHP files are stock and env driven. The drift was in the example, and that's it. So this is gone. Remove the line from composer. Database connection is now MariaDB. MySQL is now MariaDB, and my example env file is done. So before this, git clone, Lando composer setup with copy SQLite, no reverb, which is bad. We want to use what we've established. So Redis, sessions or Redis, what to do. The config is cached. So let's run this to clear it, just in case. Let's exit. That's what happens when you try to exit things cleanly. They just don't. And both connection blocks point to the same DB_var, so it's a safe swap. I know there's nothing committed. No, I don't want to do anything else. All right, let's, for fun, we'll do another Lando composer install. We might want to do a Lando rebuild. just to see what it's coming in with. And it is Pale, Pal, Reverb, Tinker, Livewire, Carbon, Collision, Termwind, and Laravel Pest. That is correct. So it's going to run Pest, which is our standards, PHP standards for Lando, and make sure that it's working properly. It should check all our blades and everything too, but in this case, we're just going to make sure that everything still comes out the way that we want it to. The upside of that is it's running on our PHP service, so we know that it's going to work. They don't exercise the driver switch. What are you doing? Are you doing SQL? It's doing a DB connection. SQL is one of my quiet passions. I've been a wannabe DBA forever. Okay, so that's all good. MariaDB swap works. Test suite all came back clean. PHP unit runs on SQLite memory, not MariaDB. So passing tests validated. That's why I ran the live tinker check separately confirm MariaDB. Test suite depends on that because of how we've set up, because of how PHP unit is set up. I don't really want to keep SQLite. I'm going to point tests at MariaDB because otherwise we're going to have to populate more than one database or something of that nature. It looks like it's going to have to set up a test database. We'll see how we feel about it. Anyway, let's just let it finish, and we're going to go back to what I was going to talk about today before I came up with that. So we're talking live map UI drops pins dynamically when trucks go live. That will probably need to be, it requires some auth with a two-factor authorization response, probably a form that we stand up. I don't think we're going to stand up a third-party service. It just doesn't seem necessary for this profile style build, but we're going to need authentication so that someone can say, this is my truck. And when they log in and say, this is my truck, they're going to need to be able to stand up a truck and populate it. So I think we need first to think about our login flow and what we're going to leverage there. I think there's already some Laravel driven authentication set on the database, but we might need to create a new database table to accommodate that. That's going to require APIs to call from the front end so that it can store the content in the back end, or use a PHP driven solution. Anyway, we need SAML authentication, 2FA, so we have a test mail server that can send email. When we go live with this, we're going to need it to send an email out to the email address and confirm with the two-factor authorization code. That means that we have a form. The form sends a post to an API saying, okay, create a two-factor authorization email. That's your confirm your email piece. Then that will create the email and send it out, and then that in turn, there's usually a separate form. So we're talking two forms, one API call, and then a second API call with the confirmation for the two-factor authorization. So all those things have to happen, and then a form where someone can say, this is who I am. And we'll need to do some image import logic where you're going to probably need to resize an image, figure out where they're going to set their menu items, figure out where they're going to set their content on the truck and what those fields are going to look like. So I think that's a good way to lead. Because a lot of the things that we're doing that it's talking about here, like I'm going to set a pin based on my current GPS location, also is dependent on somebody authenticating. We don't want some stranger to be like, oh, this truck is here today, when it's not. That's a terrible best practice. So I think authentication with those related APIs, and then the two-factor authorization email response, and setting up a form for user data entry. Yeah. So we'll say that's where we want to start. Claude should be done spinning. I created Street Bytes testing manually on your machine. Lando pest would fail there with unknown database. This needs to be reproducible. Cleanest fix is for Lando natives that is created on Lando start. Yeah. I'm saying, do we need to keep that synced with data, or can we have that done automatically ahead of executing the test? It's thinking even more. Pause for thinking. All right, so two things. One, I asked it about syncing the data between the regular test base and the testing database. It looks like Lando Pest automatically runs refresh database and migrates it. So we don't need to worry about that. Test data comes from seeders inside each test, which are deterministic and isolated. That would probably be these. This looks like a database structure to me, and it probably is seeded with a random generator. We'll see. Actually, it's right here. Database seeder creates test user and testexample.com. That would be for the default. This was provided with our Laravel build. Is this user factory where we create a user and define it and then set up the databases for it. I think it even has its own 2FA pre-established. Job batches is how it processes. Yeah, it even has email verified. So we might be able to get through that fairly painlessly when we do get that done. It's going to run a Lando restart. So it has set this public hot is gone. It has the Claude and README are corrected. It's set up the database properly for the MariaDB. env has been updated, and PHP unit tests are pointing at our MariaDB. We're creating a test database that we're going to run as the root database, and that can be used to do our PHP unit testing. We've set our node 20 to 5173 because we don't trust the port forwarding because it was having issues. That and the certificates, which let me go back. Let me check the tapes. I'm pretty sure my first prompt. Ooh. See, that's on me. I should have said, I believe that this is a cert issue. Because if I'd led with that, then I probably wouldn't have spent that many tokens. Let's see where we're at now, just for fun. 3 hour 42 minutes till it resets, 45% usage. They use a total of 401.9 thousand tokens. All the most expensive token model, because why not? Anyway. Okay. That took forever, but now that it's done, let's set up a login flow. How about that? That's more interesting than that bug smash session. Okay. Now, we want to be able to sign in a user when the user enters the sign-in, what did I call it? Accounts? It's in the footer. Profile. At the bottom of the bottom nav or through the hamburger link, we want to first drive them to an email verification form. The email entered must be properly formatted with a once that email form is submitted, we want to create an email to that entered email account with 2FA code. Then when the user goes, the email needs a return link to the email verification form. When the user goes to the email, navigates to the email verification form, and the verification email is correct, we should take them to a login form. User login information. Take them to a profile setup form where they can enter their username or their truck information and establish. Well, there's more than one way we could go about this. I've seen sites where your password is just a field inside of a wider form, but I don't necessarily want to force someone into creating a truck just because they're logging in. Maybe we have some users that just want to see their favorites. Okay. Where they can enter their profile setup form. We are still not, God, I don't know what's going on with me today. Take them to a new user form where they can set a password. Yeah, it's complicated. I just spent all these tokens. I don't want to break it down any further than that. Yeah, we'll let you spin. I'm mad at you, Claude. So the nice thing about having this in Laravel and the way that Laravel is initially set up is that a lot of those routes and things are pre-built, especially around login. Looks like this, it's just digging into our entire architecture a little bit more to see what we have available. Users table requires a name not null. I don't want more PII than I have in this. I don't really want someone to have to give me their name, social security number, and address to get access to this. So I think the name is going to be the email. And 2FA email contains both a code and a return link to the verification form. How should that link behave when clicked? Pre-fill email type code or auto verify. Link embeds the code and verifies automatically on click, jumping straight to the password form. Yeah, let's do that. That sounds nice. Really, I should have planned it. Oh, it already swapped. See there? It already swapped to plan because I had it set to auto. So it's working through the plan with me, even though I didn't set it. I'm just so irritated with that bug taking up all of the time that I didn't feel like it. I'm going to have to cut some time off this video just to account for the amount of effort that it put into fixing that bug. Okay, so here's the full plan. Verification setup flow. So it has a header, bottom nav. The profile links are dead. There is no authentication when we sign up. Flow that starts through the user taps profile. There's an email form where it can enter its email. It must be properly formatted because I included that in the prompt. On submit, email a 2FA code to that email. That email can contain a magic link. or they can enter it on the verification form. On the verification form, the user enters the code or clicks the magic link, and on a correct code, it will advance. Then there's a new user form where they set a password. We create the account, and the name is going to be the email preface. Everything before the @ should be there. So that is great. Laravel, Livewire. So 3 full-page components. That's what I'm hoping for. So 3 full-page components, each under app Livewire Auth, 1 route each. It looks like it's going to use the database and use PHP direct to store those. And it will use built-in models for email verification and just extend them a tiny bit. It's going to use verification code PHP that it builds to set a 2FA code, and then it's creating a new blade template, and it's using some existing Livewire pieces to make it all play nice. It's also going to style it. We're going to write in our profile links and change it to a route. This is a route that's being set in the routing for Laravel. Yep, that's these web.php routes. So auth email will be that email auth. Verify, and then set password and verify code are in there too. And that sounds great. Email verification model, code mailable, and it's going to create some tests. That all sounds awesome. Do it. Make me a believer again, because that was rough. All right, we're going to let it spin. So while it's spinning, it's building up the components and it's stringing it all together using Livewire, which is great. While it does that, we're going to talk about InfoSec. So PII is a serious vulnerability, and we want to treat it with all due diligence and respect. In a perfect world, we would set this up using a third-party service like SAML Auth or an OAuth. Probably OAuth would be better, to be honest. But because we're doing this locally and proving that we can, we are also going to make sure that it's following InfoSec guidelines. If you Google InfoSec guidelines for 2FA flow, I wouldn't recommend using Google as your source of truth in general, but if you vet your sources, it's pretty good. If you look at the sources here, it's a pretty good tell of your accuracy level. We want to make sure that we're following through it properly. It is going to be a stepped authentication, which is what we want. So we validate the primary credentials, username and password, then we transition them to 2FA. That's what we're doing. We are going to do, we don't want email, but that's life. And we are never going to reveal whether the 2FA step failed and rate limit 2FA attempts. So we're going to do all of those things if it hasn't done it for us already. Let's see where it's at. So it already set up a registration test. It looks like it did a lot of these things for us already. It created in our WebP routing from welcome. It says, okay, now we have some additional routes for email, verify, and password. We have set up a new, we've modified the existing blade. We set a new style guide test. We read it and created a new test suite for this. So it's going to modify it so that auth email is a clickable link and make sure that it stays clickable. It's going to show the entry form via that route, which is auth email. And then when it does click through the CTA, then it'll send a code, rejects improperly formatted email, and here's my validation through a Livewire test. Cool. Advance to the next step when it's correct. So it did those author changes for us earlier, but it's also setting us up an entire test suite because we set all of that up in advance and put it in the Claude MD, right? So if we hadn't have put our linters in place and set up our unit testing ahead of time with Pint, then it would not be doing that. So that's why it's important to think, then execute. Set your framework, make everything stand out the way that you want it to, and then follow through. So it stood everything up. It's running Pint. It's running Laristan for the Laravel standards. On top of the unit tests, it did that. And email verification flow, created those files. All right. Just tap profile. Let's see how it works. All right. That's not too bad. It followed our style guide because we set up the style guide first. All right, so if you want to test 2FA, we have a built-in mail server. The mail server right now is this Mailpit. I did ask it, full disclosure, where to go to get to Mailpit. But it looks if we did a Lando info or just followed our regular Lando build, it's in here. Claude says we could do localhost 16048, so that's what I'm going to do. When we send it, see, Claude, you're so good when you want to be good and so bad when you want to be bad. So because we sent this after establishing our style guide, it already established styles for us based on our style guide and sent them in an HTML format. So we got the 2FA code, and this magic link should just take me back. And now I can set a password. I don't care. Test pass 1 2 3. Test pass 1 2 3. Ignore my last pass. Okay. So now, if we re-click through profile, or maybe when we're moving further down the road, we would have it take you from that login directly to a My Profile page. And there we could establish what kind of restaurants do you like, or I have a food truck. And if you do have a food truck, then we could have another form for populating food truck information. And we need that established so that we can stop using fake data and start using real data and set up all of this to be actually functional, excuse me, without this hard-coded HTML business that we've got going on right now. It's the next day. I'm not happy with where we left it. Our login is working, our 2FA is working, but I want to follow these InfoSec guidelines, and that is something we need to do. So I'm going to have Copilot go through the documentation here. Actually, I'm going to cheat because we had a long bug smash session yesterday, and I'm just going to drop this into Copilot. Okay, so I'm dropping those in, and let's see what it says. Again, this is things that are very simple to fix. We want to make sure that our passwords are encoded when they're stored in the database. We want to make sure that we don't store anything delicate. So it's going to dig through the code base and establish what we currently have in place, and then give me some options for what we're going to do. Okay, so it did its analysis of what we currently have in place. It has argon and sodium are confirmed available in the container. So we have pretty much the entire InfoSec library available to us. So we're going to take our current bitcrypt encryption and change it to Argon, set for config hashtag so that when it stores the password, it has the encrypted and then has a hashtag. It rehashes on the next login, so that way it will force a new user session to re-authenticate. That hash keeps a password locked, but the hash will change on each authentication and verify. Let's go ahead and switch it. So sign-in flow was all hardening, Argon 2 ID, password policy with breach check, secure session cookies, rate limiting, or just hashing, password policy, min length, and uncompromised session cookie hardening. We're going to defer the login flow to a separate task. So we've let it spin. It went in and created and edited some files to harden our system. If you look at session secure cookie, session HTTP, and what's our same site, those are basic security guideline standards. So it's saying I want to make sure that the cookie for my authentication flow is lax, so it's going to follow anything on the same subdomain. It's going to say it has to be the same HTTP session, so we're not going to let someone jump from one phone to another and keep themselves authenticated. We're going to have a secure cookie, and these are all flags so that we could disable them for testing, or if for some reason in the future this flow isn't working, we can do that there. It's also setting our hashing driver for our password hash, which is keeping our password session, and it's set into Argon 2 ID, which is good. It also went in and added a security test file. If you look here, it's asking for a password with confirmation, and then that password with confirmation continues to work. It's going to drop it if it's over the 128 character gap, and it's going to encode with a hash password salt. Okay, it is going to verify in live that it is working. Right now, there's only sign up flow. There's no way to log back in. The stepped auth pieces, generic credentials invalid error that don't reveal. Want me to spin up the login flow as a separate task. I want to update the initial design. When the user is not authenticated, I want the menu, hamburger menu, and base nav menu to have a login image. 2FA has already been set. We can direct them to the login page. Once that login is completed, we can set them on the home page for now. After login is completed, the nav that is set for login to the profile currently in place. So ostensibly, when this is done, we should have base nav where it has profile, and our hamburger where it says profile should both be login instead. When you go to login, it could take you to the login form. If you don't have an email, it'll take you to the email verification form, and it'll navigate through that flow. So it's going through, it has the context in the Claude.md, and it's looking through our templates to see what's currently in place. We are going to use the password email OTP, so we're following SecIt. and it should refactor so that our process is meeting those InfoSec guidelines. Okay, so we've run it. It's going to set a new login route. So it's going to have a direct login route, and then it's going to have a new user setup route. It read through a lot of my existing stuff, but it created a new login using our auth login.php Livewire, and it's going to set some of our standards in here, including too many attempts. It's going to say these credentials don't match, which is probably not my favorite language, but it's going to set that. And then it is creating a new Blade template for login and a login verify. This is essentially replacing our 2FA flow that we had in place. So when somebody goes to login and that login does not have an email, there's this new here create an account button that's going to serve. When we click that create an account button, it's going to use that email that it entered and send me a 2FA to our email client, and then it's going to use that to do the new user creation flow and verify on the form. So it should look very similar. It's also updating our navigation with the changes that I said. So when it has been authenticated, that's my auth check. It'll say profile. Otherwise, it's going to go to the login flow. And it even created me a new encrypted. It created a new image for me. It's updated my login tests using Pint as our unit tester, and it's making sure that everything is working. It's going through the quality gates now. That's my Pint Laristan. So it ran through all the tests. Everything is working. The authenticated profile link points at route email. There's no profile page yet. You want me to point it somewhere better. Profile page is, we'll set up a profile in the future. For now, this is fine. All right, so let's see what it did. We should be stood up still. Let's make sure. So because we haven't worked in this extensively, you're going to see me go back to that README all the time. That's what it's for. So first time setup running the dev server. We're going to do an npm run dev and a Lando queue work and the actual, oh, it's already live. Good. The actual reverb is already established when we do a Lando start. So we don't have to worry about that. So it should be working dynamically now. Now, instead of having profile here, it's going to be login. Same here. Even includes that, which is nice. Still following our style guide. When we go to login, I should turn off my LastPass when I'm running this, but I won't. I'm going to go through the new login flow just to verify that our process is working. And I'm going to call this tests email at mail.com. And I'm going to send a code that will send our code to our mail client. This buggy dev is frustrating at mail.com. It's also not, so when I'm hitting enter, it's not automatically submitting the form, which is more ADA compliant. We need to update that. So we have Mailpit. This buggy dev is frustrating at mail.com. I'm going to use my instant login link because it's fancy. I'm going to set up a new password. I don't care, so let's go ahead and set that. Not save it. Okay. Whew. So now I can get to profile. This is going to reflect profile, and I will look into setting up SQL Ace or something so that we can see how that's stored in the database in the future. But all the tests here are working. We should now also have a new or in a login flow, but I don't have a sign out flow. I imagine when I'm done, we'll probably have a profile sign out. So when you're on the profile, it will allow you to sign out. One other note for what it's added for InfoSec, we should now have a cookie. We do. So there's a Street Byte session. This holds the current user session. So when we set all this InfoSec up, what it's essentially doing is saying, if my browser has this session cookie, then I have logged in and it can track my hash to confirm that my logged in cookie matches the currently authenticated user, right? That's what we've done with this InfoSec setup, along with hardening our encryption and how we're setting the password. That means that if I were to go to this in incognito and attempt to sign in, it would establish a new session and it would close this session. So that's a good thing to keep in mind when you're looking at testing this. One more quick bit. So I'm going to commit this because for all intents and purposes, it looks like it's working. So I'm just saying I'm added InfoSec guidelines and cookie-driven session security. And it's going to run through all my linters, and it should do that for you every time. And it said they all came back clean, so they did. Pushing that commit out. Now I created a prompt. I just asked it to create a prompt. It's pretty straightforward, but my prompt is they like the slash commands. I set a global prompt so that I can reuse this in other projects. But along with everything else that I've got here, I have update docs. When you set these, it will give your local Claude, or you could do it in the repo if you're so inclined, a preset step-by-step direction on what you're doing. The best way to create one is just to have Claude create it for you and say, these steps that I've just done, add them to a prompt so that I can quickly execute it in the future. So update docs is going to update my Claude.md, it's going to update my README, and it's going to update my documentation. I also, when I created this prompt, because it's global, I created it to be project agnostic. So if I'm working on another project, I get sick of bug smashing on this project or something, I can always go out to another project and it will work. Sign up flow, login flow, InfoSec, Mailpit, and it's going to update everything from this current context and drop it in. Claude's good at storing memory of its own. I don't trust it. And I usually want to keep some pretty thorough documentation in my corner so that when we do something like an Arc42, which theoretically we could have done at the start of a project, we can quickly establish that. All right. And it's going to update my components that we added. It's going to update my setup documentation with changes. It's going to update my front-end framework to be more accurate, and it's going to update my Claude and README files. Okay. That's it. I know this is my little bonus time because I really wanted this thing to get fully completed. So thank you for sticking out with me. We'll have this video out and you can hopefully learn from it. I anticipate that not every single video is going to go nice and clean, but hopefully Now that we've smashed these bugs, we can move on and start framing this out quickly and effectively. Thank you very much. My name's Tony. Feel free to follow, and we'll see you later on.